this is our last session. We won't be here next week because of Passover. We give you 2 weeks off. 1 week to prepare and 1 week to get over.
Our daughter's coming in next Wednesday with her family. She told us that Saturday for the Seder to come to Santa Barbara because she has family up there just to spend the day. And I pretty polite, you know, and I thought you were coming in to help me prepare the Seder. And boy, she said, we'll do it on Friday. Yeah, but she wasn't thinking that way.
She changed her mind. You put her on the right path.
Yeah, I always leave early because I don't know how to travel.
When they say the traffic is good, you don't know the traffic's good.
That's right.
Can't trust that at all. So it sounds like you'll be having a nice, fair.
Well,
They got here before the cookies. Very sad.
Oh, are you? Oh, I didn't look on the other side of the table.
Well, that's why I come. Alexis is interested with the cookies.
That is not true, but nice.
It looks like you're speaking to a full house
I guess
today.
no one can afford gas anymore.
Well,
I think,
Well, that's
everything's
Belmont.
gonna get worse in about 2 or 3 months.
Ugh, yeah, it's worse.
Everything's going up in price.
Everything, to be truthful, Rabbi, it's already gone up in price.
Yes, it has,
I
but
mean-
it's gonna get worse.
Yeah, we know that. And I was thinking about buying a car this year. My car's like 12 years old.
Yeah, probably not.
Huh?
Probably not a good idea. Or definitely don't get something imported.
slowly we'll come back to America.
Well, there's only, I heard there's only 2 cars that the entirety of the car is built in the United States. One of them is a Tesla.
We're not buying that.
Well, they will be accepted.
And the other is a Revlon or something. It's also electric.
Both electric, yeah. It's a mess.
You're being polite. But I was thinking about something the other day when I was in my garden. I'm a gardener. And I told it to one of my liberal friends. Remember, I'm a moderate, okay? I said, Jeff, in a sense, the liberals and the progressives put Trump in office. Okay, I want you to, I mean,
Kinda, sorta. Kinda, sorta. I'm pretty moderate too. I'm not, I mean, on social issues,
I'm liberal.
mostly far left.
I'm liberal.
But on everything else, I'm kind of like center left. Immigration, and for me, it's like, you have to be a compassionate country. You have to understand there are people who are running for their lives, literally.
Okay.
On the other hand, we cannot let everyone into this country who wants to come into this country. We just can't do it.
I'm glad you said that.
We
So,
have to have a sensible policy that's very careful about people. But with the top idea of compassion.
so I'm not far from you. I want the border 100% sealed. I've wanted that even in Trump's first administration, and a wall does not bother me. Whatever it takes, barbed wire, okay? But on the other hand, the people who are here already, 8 million, 12 million, okay? They're here. And unless they have a criminal record, it's way too
What's your, are you in the board?
And I
on those issues.
And I'm pro, women's choice. I want those guns to a degree.
Just put red. Isn't it red?
But there's no food color.
Yes. Tell the difference.
Something coming out?
No, if you taste it, you know, it's strawberry. But then if there's no difference, then it doesn't
I
matter.
think so too. Listen, you and I are very 1 minute and then go, is that all right?
I don't know if it's cherry or strawberry, I don't remember.
Very good.
I know it's good, but I can't tell if it's strawberry or cherry. It's probably it's strawberry.
I thought it was raspberry, but I had it tasted another one, raspberry.
We want to get invited over.
Try it?
What?
Did you try the cake?
No, it was delicious, raspberry.
I think it's strawberry.
I like raspberries, but I don't like raspberry anything else.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, so let's jump into the topic of being the chosen people today. And we'll start with a very broad idea that we have to sort of have in the back of our minds while we're talking about this. And that is the difference between a tribal God and a universal God. So when the Israelites begin, when there is first a people called the Israelites, and for our purposes, let's think about that during and after the wandering in the desert, when the Hebrew slaves leave Egypt. They become the Israelites during that long journey. So remember, they're wandering in the desert for 40 years. And as I have said a number of times, 40 for us is simply a number that means a very long time. 40 isn't 40. 40 is a very long time. What seems like a lifetime, because 40 years was a lifetime in those days. So Noah's floating for 40 days. Everything is 40 in the Bible, and it means a very long time. So the Israelites are the Hebrew slaves begin their journey out of Egypt, and they're wandering in the desert for a very, very long time. During the course of their wandering, they are sort of forged into a people. If you want to think about it, we could sort of call it boot camp. The Hebrew slaves become Israelites. They become a people during that wandering, especially when they accept God's laws via Moses at Mount Sinai. They are forged into one people who now accept God's laws. However, at that period in Israelite history, God is the God of the Israelites. He's not the God of everyone. He's the God of the Israelites. The Babylonians have their gods. The Egyptians have their gods. Every country, every group of people had their own gods, and the Israelites recognized that there were other gods in the universe. It's just that they had Adonai. So, for instance, at the end of the crossing at the Red Sea, what do we have? Mi chamocha. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai. Right? Who is like you among the other gods? So the Israelites understood there were lots of gods around. It's just that we had one God, and that was Adonai. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Echad. Listen, you Israelites, everybody else is worshiping lots of different gods, but you, Israelites, you only worship one God. The God of the Israelites is one.
Is there a difference? Are most of the other gods geographically
So are the other gods geographically local, or does our God come with us as we move? Good question. For us, Adonai is the mountain god, the Sinai mountain god, because that's where Moses encounters God. However, we absolutely know that during our wanderings, God moves with us as a pillar of fire and the cloud, etc., right? God moves with us. And when the temple is destroyed, it says God, the rabbis say, God goes into exile with us. So absolutely God moves with us. The difference between the two kinds of gods is that the other gods were capricious and whimsical, and they were often connected with nature. God of the sea, God of the sky, God of the storms, God of the whatever. Our God was above all that. He created it all. He's not a part of nature. He controls nature, but he isn't a part of nature. Now, that particular idea is going to get Spinoza thrown into Cherem in the 1600s, because Spinoza says God is nature. Nature is God. And the rabbis say, oh, no, 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 no. Absolutely not. No way, no how. And they excommunicate him. All right. So we have our tribal God, the God of the Israelites. When does the God of the Israelites become the God of everyone? I'm going to do an entire class on that, but long and short, kind of sort of during the Babylonian exile. The big chidush, which we call the big new thing, that thing that changes everything, is that the Israelites attributed the destruction of the first temple to God using the Babylonians to destroy the temple to punish the Jews for having engaged in murder, adultery, and incest. And the idea then was that, wait a minute, the God of the Israelites uses the Babylonians? Well, if the God of the Israelites can use the Babylonians for his or her purposes, then it must not be that the God of the Israelites is only the God of the Israelites. He must be the God of everybody, because he can use anybody that he wants to use to do anything. Oh. And then Isaiah comes in during the Babylonian exile with the first absolute statement of monotheism. I'm the first, I'm the last, and there's none beside me. We're going to have an entire class on how we get from monolatry to monotheism. But that was the 1-minute version. So we have a tribal God, and then later in our history, our tribal God becomes a universal God of all humanity. All right, so it's not hard to see or to understand. A God of the Israelites, okay, he likes the Israelites. He chooses the Israelites because he's the God of the Israelites. That makes sense for us. What doesn't make sense for us, and what is difficult to understand, is how could a universal God of all humanity decide, I like them the best? They're the best, and everyone else is okay. That's the tricky one. So I will offer you this. It is possible, this is Rabbi Mark speaking, not the rabbis, who were much smarter than I am, but this is my idea. Maybe the idea of chosenness came before we made the big move to universalism and the big move to complete monotheism. Maybe the idea of chosenness came during our time of a tribal God, and who is maybe just moving towards a universal God, but we hadn't gotten there yet. So the idea of being chosen wasn't any big deal, because he was our God. So he chose us, we chose him, and everything's cool. All right. Now let's look at the two different passages that talk about being chosen. Okay? Here's what we have to wrestle with. In 2025 here, our texts absolutely say, 100% say, God has a favorite people, and it's the Jews. Now, we can't walk around in the world today, ha, 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 we are chosen and you are not, right? We can't do that. But that is what our texts say. And so we have to kind of figure out, what do we do with that in 2025? That's for next week, the modern version and how we talk about that. Oh, we won't be here next week? Oh, thank you for telling me. I didn't even know that. Thank you for telling me. 2 weeks we're off, the next 2 weeks? Okay, thank you for telling me. Okay. All right. So, a verse appears in our Torah 2 times. Similar sort of verses that talk about being chosen. The first time it appears in Exodus, it is given out as a conditional formula. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." Such a beautiful line from God. Wow. "Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." Okay. You will be my treasured possession. In Hebrew, that's called Am Segula, a treasured people, Am Segula. You sing that at the end of Lecha Dodi. Boi v'shalom ateret balaga, gam b'simcha v'tzola, tochem unei, Am Segula, boi chala, lecha dodi. Okay? So you will be my treasured possession, God says. But God says, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then you will be my treasured people. So that's very clearly God implies, if you don't, then you are going to lose most favored people status, and I'm not gonna protect you the way that I said I was going to protect you, right? So, if we use this statement only, we could very well argue over the course of history, well, when we misbehaved, God looked away. We have a very famous verse that says God hides his face sometimes. When God gets angry with us, he simply says, I'm tired of you. And he turns away. And God does this throughout history. For instance, we are in bondage in Egypt for how long? We're going to read about this in a couple of weeks. How long are we there? About 400 years. Okay. About 400. And what does the verse say when God takes notice again? He hears the cries of the people and he remembers them. He remembers his people. He forgot? He forgot about us? Now he remembers? And the Hebrew does say remember. It does. So what? God just forgot about us? That's what it seems to imply. And then in the course of our history as Jews, there is the notion that sometimes God gets so mad at us that he hides his face. In other words, he just says, you know what, I am so tired of those Israelites, those Jews. I'm out of here for a while. Right? And this is one explanation for the terrible things that have happened, including the Holocaust. We're going to also have a class on Holocaust theology, which is that idea gets rejected very strongly by the majority of rabbis after World War II. They say, no. That didn't happen. God did not look the other way. No, God doesn't do that to us. But it is a way of explaining things. It's called Hester Panim. God hides his face. All right, so our first statement is conditional. If you obey my commandments, then you will be my treasured people. Okay, good. It implies that it's possible to lose that. Now let's go to Deuteronomy, which was written later than Exodus. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be his people, his treasured possession. The Lord did not set his affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other peoples, for you were the fewest of the peoples. But it was because the Lord loved you and kept the oath he swore to your ancestors, that he brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the land of slavery, from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know, therefore, that the Lord your God is God. He is a faithful God, keeping his covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments. Now, that's very nice. That's very reassuring, isn't it? It just tells us because the Lord loved you and kept the oath he swore to your ancestors, that he brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the land of slavery. I think we feel good about that one. Say, okay, God loves us, and he's still with us, and everything is good. Do you think the Babylonian exiles and the people would have loved to have heard that one? I think so. And in fact, Deuteronomy is written sometime kind of sort of around the Babylonian exile. So maybe this part of Deuteronomy was written to reassure the people, God still loves you, you're okay. Just like Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah, 2nd Isaiah, is all about people. God will take you back. God will not abandon you. Your God is here for you, etc., etc. This one is unconditional. We don't have to do anything. It just says God loves us. So we have to, as we move through the class and we move through ideas about God, we have to understand we have two competing ideas here. One is we can lose our most favored people status, and the other one is simply that God is with us no matter what. Yes? The Christians took the unconditional covenant, yes, absolutely. But remember that the Christian covenant is based on another idea, that that is correct. That is correct. But the idea that the agreement, the covenant, means agreement or contract. The contract, the agreement that God made with Moses and Moses made with God on Mount Sinai, the Christians say that was an old agreement. That was the first agreement. God has now changed his mind. And what God's new agreement is that he sent Jesus to come to the world to atone for human sin. That's the new agreement. And the New Testament, the new agreement. That's the new agreement. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, we were persecuted because we wouldn't sign on to this new agreement. We kept saying, no, there's no new agreement. We had an agreement. Moses made it with God. It hasn't changed. God didn't change his mind. And it wasn't until 1965, Nostra Aetate, when the Vatican changed its position and said, okay, the old agreement is for the Jews. The new agreement is for us, and they can have their old agreement if they want it, and we have the new agreement. So remember, when we say, what is the Old Testament? The 5 books of Moses is the Torah. The Hebrew Bible is the Old Testament. The Hebrew Bible is the Old Testament. And remember, the Hebrew Bible is not the Torah. The Torah is the first third of the Hebrew Bible, and then there are 2 other sections that make up the Hebrew Bible. Yes, Lana.
But the Christian is a conditional covenant, because if you don't believe in Jesus, you don't belong, I guess.
Well, once you accept it, it is unconditional. Once you accept Jesus as Messiah, then you're good, no matter what. Even if you're the most despicable person on earth, you can have your deathbed confession, accept Jesus as Messiah, and you're good to go. And I don't mean to say that lightly or in a negative way about Christianity. Look, Christianity is very beautiful. It is. It's very beautiful. What does it teach? It teaches love. It teaches acceptance. It teaches kindness. You wouldn't know it from today's Christian party, but Christianity teaches very beautiful things that came from Judaism, right? That's what we teach. So I don't want to say a word against Christianity, because it's a very beautiful religion, and if we had more people in the world who were living that kind of a life, the world would be a more peaceful place and a better place. Okay. So now that we have determined that there are 2 forms of the covenant, conditional and unconditional, what about the Crusades? Well, what about the Crusades? Yes, they were Christians, and they did horrendous things. Yes, in the name of God. Now, we have to take a deep breath here, because what happens after the book of Deuteronomy? What's the next book of the Bible? Joshua. And then what's the next book after that? Judges. Very good. What happens in Joshua? He starts taking land. Again, what? He engages in lots of battles. Joette? He conquers the land. He conquers the people. He kills a lot of people. God tells Joshua, go in and annihilate the Canaanites. Commit genocide against the Canaanites. Annihilate every last one of them. Because they had the land and they were pagans and they were doing things that were upsetting God. God tells Joshua to go in and annihilate the Canaanites. And if you believe the book of Joshua, one by one, Joshua goes in and annihilates each group of Canaanites in each city he comes to. So, yes, the Christians were awful during the Crusades. And we know that fanatical Islam has been awful in situations as well. But we, if we believe our Bible, we did it too in the name of God. But we didn't continue it throughout the centuries, and neither did the Christians, right? They don't go around annihilating people right now. They don't do that anymore. Islam hasn't gotten there yet. Islam hasn't gotten there yet. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I mean, both Judaism and especially Christianity had a reformation, and there were new ideas that were brought in. Islam hasn't undergone a reformation yet, and you can find an imam who supports your position to annihilate people, and he will give you permission in a religious ruling, in a fatwa, to do so. This isn't Osama bin Laden. He was an imam for his people, and he said annihilating Americans was okay. Anyway, so we did it too, if we believe our Bible. We don't do it anymore, although there's a case to be made that the settlers in the West Bank are engaging in some very, very vicious and despicable behavior in the name of God. Yes, there is that going on in for the settlers in the various territories there. All right. One wrong doesn't justify another. That's true. Absolutely. That's true. Absolutely. All right. So now let's look at who's doing the choosing. So the first place we're going to look is that God chooses Abraham. We know this from our Bible. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you will greatly increase your numbers. Okay, so God said, Abraham, I choose you. I'm going to make an agreement with you. Now, Abraham could have said, thank you, but no thanks, God. I'm out of here. But Abraham doesn't say that. Abraham fell face down, and God said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give you as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Then God said to Abram, as for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you for the generations to come. Every male among you who is 80 days old must be circumcised, including those born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner, those who are not your offspring. Whether born in your household or bought with your money, you must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. All right. So God makes a covenant with Abraham, and the covenant is sealed, shall we say, with circumcision. Now notice what God says and what he doesn't say. I'm just going to throw this out for you. I will establish my covenant to you as an everlasting covenant, to be your God and the God of your descendants. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will be your God and the God of the descendants after you. What doesn't it say?
Not the universal God.
That's true. He doesn't say I'm the God of all people. He says I'm making my covenant with you, Abraham, specifically. But what doesn't God promise to do? He doesn't promise to protect us anywhere, does he? He doesn't say, I will make you very fruitful, I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you, and I will protect you from all evil or all harm. He doesn't say that. I'm just throwing that out there. Because one of my ideas when we get to the chapter on good and evil is God doesn't, that's not part of the covenant. That's not part of the agreement. We think it is, and we want it to be. What does it mean if he's going to be our God? What does it mean? It's kind of implied if he's going to be our God, then he's going to protect us. But he's hands off, apparently. Anyway, that's for another day. So the covenant is that God presents an agreement to Abraham, and Abraham accepts the agreement, clearly, right? So God chooses the people. Why did God choose Abraham? He could have chosen anybody from any nation or anything. What was so special about Abraham? Well, if we go to the Midrash, and remember, that's the rabbis' educated imaginings about how this happened. The rabbis asked the same question. Why Abraham? What was so special about Abraham? He could have chosen anybody. And the answers that the rabbis come up with is, Abraham chose God. And so God said, I got a guy. Finally, I got a guy who knows who I am. I got a guy who recognizes me as God. Okay, I got somebody I can work with. Because everyone else was worshiping multiple gods, blah, 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 blah. So let's look at two of the Midrash. Where did that one go? Darn it. Okay, I'm going to look at, I'm missing one of them. But I'm going to look at the one that we all have heard about, or the one that we all know pretty well. And Haran died in the presence of his father Terach. Rabbi Chiya said, Terach, this is Abraham's father, Terach was a manufacturer of idols. He once went away somewhere and left Abraham to sell them in his place. So Terach had a workshop, and he had lots of the idols all lined. When you go to Hawaii, you go to the places, they have all the trinkets, right? So Terach had all of these idols made. And a man came in and wished to buy one. And Abraham was tending the idols. How old are you? Abraham asked the man. 50 years old, he said. Woe to such a man who is 50 years old and would worship a day-old object. Meaning, I just made this idol yesterday. He's not even dry yet on the shelf. He hasn't even finished drying. And you want to come in here and buy him and worship him? What kind of guy are you? Abraham said. On another occasion, a woman came in with a plate full of flour and requested him, take this and offer it to them. So she was making an offering to the various idols. And so he took a stick and he broke them. And he put the stick in the hand of the largest. I think I'm missing a couple lines here. I don't know what happened to my page. I'm sorry. But This is when Terach comes home now. Terach comes home, and he asks him. No. He has the stick. He breaks them, and he puts the stick in the hand of the largest idol. So now you have a bunch of little idols that have been broken. The big idol that had been fashioned has a stick in its hand. When his father returned, he demanded, "What have you done to them?" And Abraham says, "I cannot conceal it from you. A woman came with a plate full of fine meal and requested me to offer it to them. One claimed, 'I must eat it first.'" In other words, one of the little idols said, "I got to eat it first." While another claimed, "No, I have to eat it first. I want the offering that she brought," the little idols. Thereupon the largest arose, he took the stick and he broke them. So the father says, "Why do you make sport of me? Have they any knowledge?" Terach said. "Should not your ears hear what your mouth has said?" And Abraham, in other words, do you know what you're saying? You're telling me the big idol, he broke the little tool? What kind of crazy person are you, Abraham? And Abraham says, "Aha! See? You think they have power. They have no power whatsoever." The other midrash that I wanted to talk about had to do with Abraham. Abraham sees the sun come up, basically, and he says, that must be God. And then the sun goes down. He goes, "Oh, that can't be God. He was here, and now he left." Then Abraham sees the moon come up. He says, that must be God. And then he sees the moon go away. And he says, "Well, how can that be God? He went away too." So then Abraham decides, God must not be the sun or the moon. God must be God outside of nature and the one who causes them to rise and descend. And basically the idea is that God says, finally, somebody gets it. Somebody gets it. And then he goes to Abraham and he says, "Okay, you are the one who finally gets it. Let me make an agreement with you." And Abraham says, "Okay, we're good." All right. So in terms of choosing, we can say that God chose Abraham. And why did Abraham choose God? Because the rabbis imagine that Abraham figured out on his own that God was God. And nobody else had figured that out, that there was only one God. Everyone was worshiping all the other idols and all the other things, and it was Abraham who figured it out. So God said, "Okay, he's my guy. Here we go." Finally. I wonder why the people didn't worship Terach, because he was fashioning the idols. Well, I think the idea, in the same way that the Israelites never worshipped Aaron, who made them the golden calf, right? He was simply the manufacturer of the thing that God would that represented God. So Aaron was simply the guy who made the golden calf, but it was the golden calf that was the representation of God. So Terach was simply the guy who made a clay idol of whatever the idol was, and the people said, "Okay, he's the guy who makes the idol, but the idol is the thing that is imbued with God's essence. The golden calf is imbued with God's essence." And clearly our tradition said, "Oh, no, No way. Not even close. No. Okay. So we have the idea that God chooses Abraham, and he chooses him because Abraham chose God. So it was a good match. The two of them chose each other. When God finally had somebody, after all this time, that he could say, okay, these are going to be my people. And then, as I told you, I don't think it was last week, the week before, I read you 2 midrashim about how we accepted the Torah. And I'll go through that just very quickly again, because we've already talked about it a little bit. And that is, we accepted God, Abraham accepts God, and then we as a people accept God and God's rules at Mount Sinai. We say, when Moses comes down, Na'aseh v'nishma, we are going to do these things, and then we are going to hear them, which is very curious, right? Because everyone says, what do you mean? Let's hear it first, and then we'll decide if we want to do it. So you recall that I told you about the first midrash that says God shops the Torah around to many different civilizations. And he says, would you like this Torah? Would you like my rules? And the first thing they say is, I don't know. What's in it? Tell me about it. What do we have to do? And God says, you shall not murder. And they say, I don't think so. Well, murder is part of who we are. I mean, we just go around killing people all the time, so forget it. We can't take it. So God shops it around to the next civilization. Well, I don't know. What's in it? You shall not commit adultery. Oh, no. We do that all the time. It's very fun. No, thank you. We don't want that one. And he continues shopping it around. And everyone says, I don't know, tell me what's in it. No. And then he goes to the Israelites. And what do the Israelites say? The Israelites do not say, I don't know, tell me what's in it. The Israelites say, we'll take it sight unseen, and then you'll tell us what's in it. Na'aseh, we'll take it. We'll do it. V'nishma, and we will listen, we will hear what's in it. So we'll take it, we accept it sight unseen, we're good. You don't have to tell us what's in it first. So that's the first idea of how we chose God as a people. We were Hebrew slaves coming out of Egypt. We became the Israelites during the wandering, especially at Mount Sinai, as a group, as a people. We said, we'll take it. And then, of course, I read you the other minority midrash that says the people didn't really want to take it. And God held the mountain, Mount Sinai, over their heads. Remember this? And he said, let me make you an offer you can't refuse. And the people said, okay, yeah, good, we're good with this. Yeah, we'll take it. We don't even have to look at it. Yes already. Yes, we'll take it. Stop, we got it. Okay, good. So that's the second idea. That's the minority idea. But then the rabbis brought up a very interesting point, which I told you is, if you accept something under coercion, it's not valid. At some point you can say, you know what? At the time I had no choice. But I don't want this stuff. I don't believe in this stuff. No, I don't want it. He made me do it, literally, at the time. And the rabbis say, well, that is, you could say that, except that we re-accepted all of those ideas in the time of Esther. Because there's a line in the Megillah that says, let me read you the line. Even so, they again accepted it willingly in the time of Achashverosh, as it is written, the Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed and upon all such as joined themselves unto them. And he taught, the Jews ordained what they had already taken upon themselves through coercion at Sinai. So basically what happened there is that the rabbis said, well, if you go with this midrash, it was coerced, and you could like wriggle out of it and say, it wasn't my decision, it was forced on me. And the rabbi said, yeah, they can say that. Okay, we got to find a way to let them know that they wriggled out of it for a little while, but they can't wriggle out of it now. They can't use that now. And they looked through all of our material and they found out, well, we have this line in Esther that implies that they sort of re-agreed to everything. So, in the time of Esther, the Jews re-agreed to everything, and, you know, these are the Jews of Shushan, right? This is not the Jews of everywhere in the world, but these are the Jews of Shushan, agreed to everything, and therefore all Jews everywhere have re-agreed to it, and I don't have to worry about this idea of coercion anymore. It's very clever from the rabbis. They were very, very brilliant people. Very brilliant people. It's very clever, and that's how we are. That's why we can't use that midrash now and say, well, we were coerced, so I never agreed to that. Yes, Joette. It's very interesting that they would use the book of Esther, where God is not mentioned. Where God is not mentioned at all. As a proof text. Yes, absolutely. So Joette very correctly points out, it's very interesting. They're going to use a book in our Bible where God is not mentioned as a proof text for saying that we accepted everything that God gave to us. But it was the one example they could find. That was the line that they could find. And remember in Esther, in the book of Esther, God isn't specifically mentioned anywhere. But the rabbis do find God in the book of Esther, because when Mordecai comes to Esther and says, you know, Esther says, oh, these things are going to be terrible. It's about, Mordecai says, look, our help will come from another place. And the rabbis say, aha! We know where that other place is. Right up there. God is in the story. The other place from which help will come is God. Okay, very good.
Doesn't that contradict the other idea that God would not intervene?
Say that again. Doesn't that contradict the other idea? From where?
Well, I don't remember from where you said, but in our class today, that God would not intervene on behalf of the Jewish people. Would you?
So, okay, good. So the question is, doesn't that contradict the earlier idea where I said sometimes God hides his face and doesn't get involved? So we have to understand that the rabbis and the commentators are looking back on Jewish history and saying, look, this happened and the Jews were annihilated and they weren't protected. This happened and the Jews were annihilated and weren't protected. And this happened as well. And so the rabbis look back through our tradition to find out, well, how could that possibly be? How could that be? And I think the verse is Jeremiah. And the verse says, there will be a time when I will be so angry with you that I'm just going to take a hike. I'm going to the Bahamas for, a couple of 100 years, and I'll get back to you when I'm back. I mean, I make light of this, but that's what's going on. God says, I'm going to hide my face. No, I'm done with you. But clearly that's not the case with Esther, right? Because God if we say that God is in the story, God clearly does come and he rescues the Jews of Shushan, right? That's the whole point of the story, that the Jews of Shushan are rescued and that Haman doesn't get to win. Haman gets taken off to the gallows. The good guys win. The bad guys are executed. Happy ending. That's the whole point. God did save us in Esther. But there are other times in history where it seems like God has hidden his face and God is no longer around. When we get to good and evil, we'll talk. I'm going to present you with some ideas from the Kabbalah that might help that make some sense, and some other ideas. Okay, so this is the beginning of chosenness. Next week, I want to look at some modern ideas. Oh, God. In 3 weeks, thank you. In 3 weeks. We're off the next 2 weeks. Come on, Mark. We're off the next 2 weeks. In 3 weeks, we're going to look at some examples from medieval literature in the Kuzari. And little preview, the Kuzari says Jews have superior DNA. That's why they were chosen. They are superior to all other peoples. Ooh, that's a tough one. And we're going to look at some ideas from Mordecai Kaplan. We're going to look at some ideas from the Reform movement and try to make sense of how do we even begin to think about being the chosen people in 2025 as opposed to maybe being a chosen people as opposed to the chosen people. And what do we do with that idea? Because our texts, as we saw, very clearly say, absolutely 100% say, God chose us as his most favored possession. That is what our texts say. And we have to own up to that. But maybe we have to understand it in a different way. All right, everyone, have a beautiful week. Have a wonderful, beautiful Passover, everyone. Yes, I'll see you in 3 weeks, not next week. I'll see you in 3 weeks.
What is the best time to call you to get the phone number? Or do you have it?
I have it.
Let me write it down. Can you write it down? Yes. You know it by heart?
Of course. That's the president and the president's wife. I speak to them almost every day.
I have a suggestion. I love the music, but I couldn't follow it because the melodies were different.
Of course.
Can you teach from Lavina the new melodies? People that are coming in and are not expecting that?
Well, if you come to a few services, then you
It's
will.
hard for me to come at night. It really is, because I'm up at 3 in the morning and I'm exhausted and I don't think I'm safe to drive.
Well, you can always use the computer. Join us on Zoom.
I don't know how to use a computer. My husband built them. I'm not real good.
That's okay. I don't know. I'm not
I
sure.
I can do power tool. Well, Avina Rosenthal was the cantor at Temple Israel years ago, and she taught melodies, and it was easy and wonderful, and my daughter knows them today. That's what held her to Judaism. But I enjoyed the service. It was nice. I think you should make a disc. If I could have someone drive with me, but it's not unsafe.
See you in a few weeks.
Talking about how Muhammad tried to convert the Jews because he recognized they were the true religion.
I think that the idea
kind of bring them into the fold. And then the same thing with Christianity later on. Okay, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. And then probably the Christians later on too, have the same ideology. Well, earlier, but then when, like in Spain, when the expulsion, they,
Well, the expulsion happened because Jews had converted to Christianity, and the
supposedly,
Vatican Church didn't agree that those people
had really converted. Yeah, right. They were heretics in a way.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. See you in 3 weeks.
Yes.
I rode out there. I remember there in the 90s. Several people told me that stories were fine. They just left the bathroom. What was the timing? There were a lot of people
bring tears to your eyes.
I understand we have a table for Friday night also together. That's what we're supposed to have. They wrote me. They wrote me because I said I've already sent in my money. They wrote me back, yes. Ken has requested payment.
Well, I'm gonna go to Rabbi Mark's second Seder. I'll just have to have more people.
I've ordered from Hamada North Hollywood. I've got salads, entrees and stuff. Matzah, green cheese, and whatever else I want.
I don't have any
I'm
dairy.
not even buying a whole ton of other stuff.
I make everything.
I don't think about it more than that.
I enjoy it. Even when I was working, I made time to do it. I changed dishes, I changed linens, I
I'm
changed.
not up to it. I can't do it.
Hello, everybody. I just want to remind you, especially those that just arrived, that we're not going to have our classes for 2 weeks during the Passover break. So we'll see you in 3 weeks, and we'll send out an email to remind you as well. So anyway, happy Passover to everybody.
I get gefilte fish in a jar. I like the sweet. Adrian, don't you get tired of looking absolutely
right.
wonderful? Oh, please. Oh, please. I just love her. She's such a love. You are a coffee drinker, aren't you?
I am, but not, this is tea, because I already had 3 coffees, so. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's 11 o'clock. It's kind of, Okay. So I hope everyone's doing well this morning. And so I saw it here. Passover is in the air. I saw a cookbook being passed around. I heard a cake, strawberry today, was baked. Not, I mean, you're a nice lady, but there was sort of like a dual purpose to the cake, to make everyone happy and also to get rid of your chametz, right? Like this is the time when you, with 3 young boys in my house, you know what the kids have had every morning for breakfast? Grilled cheese. And this morning, one of my kids, we have one of those, the panini makers, right? And before George Foreman of blessed memory made a fortune, I had thought about that. I just thought about that. Take a sandwich maker, put it on a 35-degree angle, and call it a grill and slap your name on it. The Brian Schulden fry, he made, instead of having people punch him in the head, he just smiled and made hundreds of millions of dollars. But I used the panini maker today for grilled cheese, and I've been using it every week. And the kids asked, so I said to them this morning, they were like, we don't want grilled cheese. I said, tough. You're having grilled cheese. That's it. We got a whole loaf of bread here. We got to start moving it. We got to move that bread. Okay. And I saw the first, just a few announcements that if you are considering coming to our Passover Community Seder and you've yet to RSVP, no, it's not too bad, but please do RSVP. The longer you wait, the harder it is on our administrative staff. And so we like doing these things because it's nice, for the community. It offered a Seder, and it makes it harder. So if you're not, if you're coming to the Seder, just make sure to RSVP. And another community announcement is if you have not yet voted in the World Zionist or Congress elections, you all read your emails very carefully. You've gotten like 6 emails from me about the World Zionist Congress. Please register to vote. Merkaz, I think it's slate 17, which is the conservative movement that assures that a progressive but traditional voice is heard, one that supports pluralism, one that supports equality, one that supports all nice, good things. So just vote for that slate. I can't understand what some of those things are either, and if I got up here and started explaining them to you, it would last longer than a Passover Seder. So I'm not going to do that. We actually had a speaker yesterday that explained a lot of these issues. We had the vice chairperson from the World Zionist Organization, Izahar Hess. He was our guest speaker, and for an hour and a half, he told us all of the micro nuances and about the slate, about everything, and I'm not going to repeat that. I wasn't expecting a good attendance. That was more, it was for those who, most people are not as interested in hearing about it for an hour and a half. They kind of want to know the basics and then press a button on their phone, which allows them to vote, which is fine. So I just care that you vote. So if you've not yet voted, it takes, my kids said it takes 3 minutes on their phones. So like for us, that's 15 minutes, right? But right, and it costs $5. So so it really just it's a few minutes. It's clicking on things, and then and it costs $5 to register, and it's very important. Okay. If you have more questions about that, you can go online and find out more information, and we'll be sending out more information. Some of you are looking at me with utter confusion, like this is the first time you've heard of it. If you're not getting your .rel emails, or I don't blame you if you don't read them all. Diane, but we're trying to be deliberate about our emails. So every Sunday is a weekly email. Just comes out with everything that's going on the next week. And then once in a while, we have like a special events like Passover. So we're trying to limit our emails so that we don't overwhelm you. But if you're not getting your .rel emails after MID, go into the office and let them know. Most often, it's because you have AOL. How many of you have AOL? Sometimes AOL blocks these kinds of, no problem. Okay. All right. So if, anyway, whatever you have, we'll figure out a way to get it to you, the information. But you have to vote in the World Zionist Congress elections. If this class is terrible and you want to vote during the class, I wouldn't hold that against you. I mean, I am just going to be talking for an hour about matzah. So, I mean, it's kind of true. Joette, that was good. It was the cracker of the class. She's a cracker up. There you go. Okay, so if we were to ask you and your friends, by the way, I do have one qualm with the organizers of this event. Every week since the week started, there's always chamomile tea here. No chamomile tea this week. It's always like a lovely, like I always like coming to MID. I don't think I drink chamomile tea ever except MID. I always look forward to it, but they're out. What a shame. You drank the last chamomile tea? No, there's no chamomile. Oh, maybe you hit. I just saw hibiscus, but this is it's fruity. It's a little. Yeah, we got to make sure. I should bring some chamomile tea. I was like, oh, it's just like, this feels like a chamomile tea kind of gathering. It's calm. It's like, it's not. All right, let's have an argument about it, Okay, so let's talk matzah. So if you were to explain to your non-Jewish friends, why do we eat matzah on Pesach, kindly raise your hand and offer me a suggestion of what you would tell your friend who is not Jewish, and I will tell the millions viewing online what you said. I will repeat. Why do you eat matzah? Bridget, go ahead. They didn't have time for the bread to rise when the Jews left Egypt, and so what they had then was matzah, and so we now have matzah as a recollection of that event. Great. Okay, you'll see that in the Torah. Good. Other reasons? Lana. To remind us, so piggybacking on what Bridget said, but a reminder of what happened back then. Okay, good. Yeah, Warren. Yeah, Warren's like, look, because it's nice, Bridget, that, Torah says do it. Simple, right? Okay, good. Torah just says do it, eat matzah. It doesn't say eat matzah, by the way, for 7 days. It certainly doesn't say eat matzah for 8 days. So it just, the commandment to eat matzah is just once. And then if you have 2 Seders, obviously, because we're 2 days of Yontif, then you can eat it twice. But you don't have to, let's just say I personally eat matzah during the Seder, and that's it. If I'm going to get my carbs, I'm going to get my carbs a different way. I'm going to, so I just try and make it through with other foods. What do I eat? So first of all, we eat kitniot. So there's 5 types of leavened products that are forbidden on Pesach. Right? There are wheat, barley, oats, rye, and spelt. Okay? So those are 5 grains, that was the word I was looking for, thank you, that can become chametz. So, kitniot, some people thought of it as like grain adjacent, right? Meaning it's certainly not for prohibited, but like it kind of feels like it, like corn or rice or any types of beans. So in the Ashkenazi, it just becomes Sephardic. The truth of the matter is they were much smarter than us. Their food tastes much better than ours. They're like more relaxed. They have better music. They smile a lot better. They don't complain as much. Just becomes Sephardic. It's really a better thing to do. I'm from Poland. My family was in Poland just as long as yours, and it didn't end well in Poland. I don't need to tell you. But I don't know. Cholent. It's disgusting. Like how long? Come on. Let's get real. It's exactly. Anyway, so kitniot was the Ashkenazi idea that, we can make things that look too much like one of these 5 products, so therefore we're not going to let people eat those things that could be made to look like the 5 grains. So like rice, they said no rice. They said no beans, no. Now, in Israel, when Israel was formed, it was one army, and they wanted to have it's a kosher army, so they had, according to the Sephardic standard of kashrut, because no one would say that kitniot is not kosher for Passover. It's yet Ashkenazi Jews just don't eat it. So if you go over to Cambridge Farms, you'll see it'll say labeled for kitniot eaters or for not kitniot eaters, but it won't ever say it's not kosher for Passover if it has kitniot. Now, so I was about 25 years ago. I was living in Israel, and it was over Pesach, and all the restaurants are open. They all become kosher for Passover. The movie theater is open. It's kosher for Passover concession stand. And it's like popcorn that's kosher for Passover. Now, that's kitniot. And I'm like, this is stupid. I just thought to myself, why am I not eating kitniot? And so I just started eating kitniot, and I declared myself Sephardic. Then I have to say, that became a lot, now being serious, when we became vegetarians, if you're a vegetarian and you're not eating kitniot, I don't know what you're eating. I just don't know how you're making it through those 8 days. Or you're eating just disgusting things that are just bad for you. And so we in our house, we continued eating kitniot. We eat a lot of rice and beans and tofu and just kitniot. We just eat a lot of vegetables, and we just don't want our digestive systems to kind of go into a revolt. It feels too much. So anyway, I don't know why we're getting on this. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Okay, so matzah, recollection of what, and Warren said because the Torah tells us to eat matzah. Okay, good. Why else do we eat matzah? I also want to point out, Bridget said that we eat matzah on the way out. Egypt. That's okay. So let's go through the sources, and then I want to show you something. The first time that we see matzah in the text, in the Torah, is actually earlier than the story of Pesach. It's before the book of Exodus. It's in the book of Bereshit. Vayivtzar ba ma'od vayasuru elav. But he urged them strongly, so they turned towards him. Vayavo'u el beito, and they came into his house. I'm on the first thing, the first section. I should have labeled them. Vaya'as lahem mishteh, and he made for them a drinking party. Umatzot, and he baked umatzot afa, and he baked matzah. Veyochalu, and they ate. Does anyone know who this is about? Not Abraham. The angels, but after they go to Abraham, where do they go? To Lot. When they're going to Abraham's house, first of all, he doesn't do the baking. Who does? Sarah does the baking. It's the chapter before. It's chapter 18. But here, it's Lot. So Lot says to the angels, they come to Lot's neighborhood, and Lot's like, you guys should probably come inside, because he knows he doesn't live in a great neighborhood, Sodom and Gomorrah. And so he says, come inside, and they're like, no, we'll stay in the town square overnight. And Lot's thinking, that is not a good idea. That's when there are certain neighborhoods where you would not want to be caught after dark. And Lot says, not a good idea. And so he kind of compels them to come to his house. And he makes for them, it's interesting, there's a lot of midrash on this. I was just studying it this morning in preparation. Vayavo'u el beito, so they went to his house. Vayas lehem mishteh. Feast is not really the word here. It's a mishteh is drinks, like a drinking feast. Umatzot afa, and he baked matzah. V'yachalu, and they ate. So the use of matzah there, how does that use of matzah color your understanding? And it depends on how you understand matzah. How does it color your understanding, or if it does, of what occurred in the event? Joette.
I thought that the matzah with this story and also with leaving Egypt was more like flat pizza.
That's right. Good. So Joette's saying, look, I'm extrapolating from what you're saying. Joette's saying, someone comes over, you're not expecting company, you throw something together, it's like a quick pita. It's like, you have a bag of chips and the tortilla chips or whatever, like you throw something out, a little hummus, a little guacamole, right? Something easy. So he put together some drinks and pita chips, essentially. And it's like a quick meal. So then that actually bodes well for Lot, right? If you Lot in there, then he looks very hospitable. He's not expecting guests. They come, he puts out, and he tries to put together something, quick food. Okay. What's another way of looking at this? If it's there's a few other ways of looking at it. It's a different way of looking at it. How this colors our understanding of Lot. Poor man's bread. Okay, good. So how does that color your understanding of Lot? He's being cheap. He's boozing, yeah, but it's bottom shelf. It's like, it's the blended whiskey. He's not giving them the single malt, right? But it could be that, wait a second, he gives them the cheap bread. He's like, oh, white bread, Wonder Bread for everybody. Great, that maybe Lot is being cheap. Okay, good. What's another understanding that you could understand Lot? Good. So it could be he's quick. Like, have you ever done that? I don't do this anymore, especially with the cell phone. When you come home with somebody and you're like, oh, they're staying for dinner. And your wife looks at you and goes, oh, they are. And then you have a talk after dinner. Divorce papers are right. So now I've learned not to do that. But you call before you invite. Yeah, you're throwing something together, right? That's right. The Israelites did the same thing later. Susie, go ahead. Oh, FHB. Your mom, do you know FHB? See, Sephardic Jews don't know FHB because they always have enough food. You don't know what FHB is? Oh. So FHB is called family holdback. FHB is when you're a kid, family holdback. So family holdback is when you're summoned into the kitchen to help and your mom tells you, "You're not in the mood for soup, are you?" And you understand that there's only one answer. No, I'm not in the mood for soup. All the guests are in the mood for soup. They eat soup first. And then if there's any soup left over, you all of a sudden could be in the mood for soup. But you don't eat before the guests eat. Family holdback. That's a good. Now, Sephardim don't have family holdback because they always have enough food. And they okay. But there's another understanding of Lot here that actually Rashi, I think it's Rashi, that Rashi has. This is kind of, it's not him as being hospitable, which is one way of understanding it. It's not him being cheap. It's not him being rushed. It's him being religious. Because Rashi suggests it's Passover. Rashi said the reason he serves in the matzah, because Rashi's like, why? If in the story of Abraham, we already learned about similar kind of cakes that were baked when guests came, especially these same three. By the way, these guys should learn like how to pick up the phone and call before they arrive. These guys are like, these are angels. They're prancing around town. They're showing up at people's houses, like they could call, they could send an email. They should do something. But anyway, so they come, the angels, and in the Abraham story, it doesn't use the word matzah, but in this story, it uses the word matzah. Why didn't it say, I forget the terminology that it uses in the previous chapter, but it's sort of like uga, which is like a cake, a flour cake or something like that. Why does the word here specifically matzah, Rashi asks? And so Rashi comes up with an answer, because it was Passover. Now, this is not a curveball. What is your challenge to Rashi? How do you celebrate Passover when Passover hasn't happened yet? How are you celebrating the Exodus from Egypt, which Bridget and Warren and I don't remember who else, but how are we commemorating something that has not yet happened? How is Lot celebrating Passover? And so Rashi is relying on a rabbinic there's a rabbinic concept called Ein Mukdam U'Meuchar B'Torah, which means there is no early and late in the Torah, meaning that there is no linearity to the events in the Torah. That in a sort of like a weird kind of like it's all that they were celebrating events before they happened. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. Go ahead. Maybe that's why they drink a lot, the mishta. Vayas lehem mishta. They needed to get drunk in order to commemorate an event that didn't yet happen. We may need to drink to believe that. Okay, go ahead. This is before Einstein, but it's not really before Einstein because there is no linearity. So it's before and after. I understand. I'm just playing with you. All right. So this is the Bridget source. Matzah, the bread of our freedom. Bridget was kind enough to remind us that I'm on the second source. Vayofu et habatzek asher hotziu mimitzrayim, and they baked the dough which they took out of Egypt, ugot matzot, and they made matzot. Ki lo chametz, it had not leavened. Ki gorshu mimitzrayim, because they had been driven out of Egypt. Velo yachlu, and they were not able lehit mamea, to delay or to tarry. That's one of the greatest Hebrew words ever. Lehit mamea, to tarry. I mean, it sounds the way what it means. Lehit mamea, which means, lehit mamea. They couldn't lehit mamea. They couldn't lehit mamea. V'gam seda lo asu lahem, and they hadn't made any provisions. So they just baked these loaves on their way out. And this is what Rosalie was saying, that maybe this is what Lot did. It was the quick throw together. And what Harriet said, what Bridget said was the quick throw together. And it didn't rise because bread, to make bread, the yeast needs, how long does it need to rise? Like a day, like 12? No, that's if you don't want it to rise. So I guess 19 minutes then you have. But how long does it really take? 2 hours. Okay, so they didn't have that. They had no lihit mamea. They couldn't lihit mamea. They don't have 2 hours to spare. We're going to get out of here. We got to leave. Okay. That is the first recollection of matzot in the book of Exodus, and that's matzah as the bread of freedom. Hey, we don't have time to, we're driven out. We don't have time to delay. Let's use matzah. Next page. This is something that none of you said. Page 2, Deuteronomy verse 16. Lo tochal alav chametz shivat yamim. You shouldn't eat leaven for anything with leaven for 7 days. Matzot lechem. You should eat matzah. Hold on, let's just read it in English here. You shall not eat anything leavened with it for 7 days thereafter. You should eat unleavened bread, the bread of distress, for you have departed from the land of Egypt hurriedly, so that you may remember the day of your departure from the land of Egypt as long as you live. So a little bit of what Lana said, but they introduce something else. They call it matzot. Look in the second line in the Hebrew, lechem oni, the bread of distress, or the bread of poverty or affliction. Ki, because bechipazon, in a hurry, yatzata me'eretz Mitzrayim, you left Egypt. But here, matzot is described as a lechem oni, the bread of distress or poverty. But again, does anyone think of matzah as the bread of distress or poverty? What's the difference between distress and poverty? See, I would translate that not as distress. I would say poverty. What's the difference between distress and poverty? Yeah, it's like objective. Like, you are poor. You don't have to be distressed if you are poor. You could just be poor. What's distress? It's distress. It's certainly stress. It is certainly stress. So what's interesting here is, distress is all of that. Lechem oni, the bread of poverty. Let's say if we read this as the bread of distress, then that works with some of the explanations that we've offered before. But if we read it as the bread of poverty, because distress is like an emotion, you don't have enough time, you're worried, it's, you got to get out. And the heat mamea, you can't tarry. But here, if it's called the lechem oni, which is the bread of poverty, how does that change the whole thing? Oh, yeah. As from someone who's lived under a communist, like, that's, you understand, like, it's, I told the kids today with the bread, with the what do we call that thing? The panini maker. You're like, oh, well, I'm like, no, we're not throwing out the bread. We're eating it, because we don't throw out food. We eat it, right? And so sometimes I think that it's always a personal sign of distress when kids are wasteful with food, or adults. I mean, when you look at restaurants and how people just throw out food, it's unbelievable. I want to address something that you said, Nadia, which is that if you call it lechem oni, the bread of poverty, if you call it the bread of distress, the emphasis is on the leaving of Egypt. During that particular juncture in time, we didn't have time to pack up our stuff and to leave. We didn't have time to tarry. It's a bread an eating that captures that last moments in Egypt. If you call it the bread of poverty, then the emphasis is on the slavery, not the leaving. It's the slavery experience. So it depends on how you translate it. It actually is very meaningful. Do you mean that it's the bread that we ate while we were slaves in Egypt and we had no money and we were oppressed and poor, and therefore it's lechem oni because we couldn't afford anything else? Or is it the bread of distress because we are leaving, and when we're leaving, we don't have time to leave, and therefore we got to move things along? It doesn't matter. You could have money in that situation. So wait, hold on for a second. I'm going to play this out for a little bit. I see my hands up, but it kind of like shows like what is matzah. Is matzah our bread that is matzah a commemoration of the slavery and what our experience was in Egypt? Or was it a commemoration of leaving Egypt and being in a hurry to leave Egypt? It seems like it's both. But it's interesting, like, where we focus on what. So I'll give you another example and I'll ask some questions. From the Pesach Haggadah, from the Magid section, Halach Ma'ania. We say, Halach Ma'ania de achalu ahavtana va'ara de Mitzrayim. This is the bread of destitution that our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. When you say halach ma'ania, you're saying not this is the bread that we ate when we left Egypt, but this is the bread that we ate when we were in Egypt. So you can see that in our Passover Seder, there is a duality to the matzah. The matzah has become both an expression of what we did when we were experiencing freedom, when we left, like our deliverance out of slavery, and it is also a symbol of the slavery itself. And that's kind of like an interesting combination to me. It strikes me very sort of, we commemorate the leaving with the matzah and we commemorate the slavery with the matzah, but it's both matzah. Okay, Melinda, and then. Yeah, when we left Egypt, we weren't poor. Right. When we left Egypt, so Melinda makes a good point, but then but that was when they picked all that stuff up at the last minute. Good. So Melinda's saying the distress makes sense because at the last minute we certainly weren't poor, but for 400 years before that we were poor. Okay, good. Ken, you wanted to say something? Yeah. So then did they fear the pursuit of the Egyptians? And that bears out, right? I mean, they wanted to leave. Okay, Joette?
Well, if this is what they ate when they were in the land of Egypt, then the explanation of not having time to wait for the bread to rise doesn't fit.
Good.
This was already what they did.
Right. So Joette asked a very good question, very Talmudic question, which is, if this was the bread that they always ate, then they wouldn't have needed to bake it on the way out because they would have already had it. If this is all they were able to afford to eat, it could either be, according to Joette, it's a good point, logically, the bread of poverty, what they ate in Egypt or the bread of what they ate when they were leaving, like the quick exit. But it's hard for it to be both, because if it was the bread that they were eating in Egypt, they wouldn't have. The rushing part would have made no difference, because they'd only had that bread. The rushing didn't change the bread that they ate. They never had, they were slaves. They never had either the supplies or the time to make something, more leavened. So is it the bread of poverty or is it the bread of haste? Because if it's hard for it to be both, because if it's the bread of haste, then that saying like, oh, we ate this because we didn't have time to tarry, and we had to get out of there quick. That implicit in that is saying, if we had time, we would have made bread. But then what Joed is pointing out is, wait a second, if it's the bread of poverty, that's all they would have eaten. They didn't know from bread. So the having time to tarry makes no difference, because they wouldn't have made bread anyway, because they didn't have the resources or the time to make bread. All right, Rosalie. All right. Right, they left for the food. They left to become not eat kidney oat for 1,000 years. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it could be. Rosalie is pointing to say it could have been the non-Jews who are leaving. I don't think so. I think like that. I like the creativity in the read, but I think the text is clearly talking to us, meaning like the mishpacha here. Like, what are you doing? I think it's a creative read, though. There's another interpretation. Maybe I'll close with this, that I thought was kind of cool, is to say, no. This is from the Babylonian Talmud. Don't read it as the bread of distress or the bread of poverty, but read it as the bread of conversation. Because like onim also means answer, to reply. So if you say lechem oni, it becomes, I see your hands, just let me finish my point. It's the bread of conversation. So look at this on the bottom of page 3. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said, lechem oni, the bread of oni. Now, is that the bread of poverty or distress? We're not sure. Lechem, the bread, she'onin alav divarim harbeh, where people answer and talk about it a lot. In other words, it's called lechem oni because it's a conversation starter. It's something that gets people, this is different, right? So according to Shmuel, the bread is now one doesn't preclude the other, but he's saying the chief characteristic about the bread is not the haste and is not the poverty, it's the fact that it's different and it causes people to have conversation, which we do on Passover. So and then he says, and then he states the other opinions about it being, here's another one. That's okay. All right, so when you ask Warren, you had something, go ahead. Right. So all of these, none of these answers are perfect, and they're all kind of beautifully. So Warren asks, but wait a second, didn't they know they were leaving? They knew like the Paschal lamb and the slaughter, like, So, like, how do they not have time to make bread? They had time to slaughter an animal and rub, smear a little blood on the doorpost. So, or unless they didn't know exactly what time, and it kind of snuck up on them. But none of these answers are perfect, but they're all perfect, right? I like looking at matzah. Nadia, go ahead, and then I'm going to conclude. Okay. Yeah. Right, so you see the bread of distress. And, like when you're on a big trip, you know that you're leaving. And when you always forget something and it's never running on time, and and the morning that you're going to the airport is never fun. Right? Those, like, you can know you're leaving, you have everything, but that morning is always like a little bit, haggard. So anyway, what is matzah? It wasn't clear, its roots are beyond Passover. It's used earlier in the Torah. Why, we don't know. What does that communicate about Lot? We don't know. What is the reason for eating matzah, or maybe the better way of answering it is, what are the reasons for eating matzah on Passover? Is it a commemoration of the Exodus, or a commemoration of the slavery, or a little bit of both? A certain way of looking at the matzah over Passover. However you think about matzah, I hope that you have a pleasant and beautiful holiday. If anyone is uncertain of their plans and would like to come to our community Seder, you can RSVP to the office. And then if you are, if it's a little bit more than you have, we can help you out with that. We want to make sure that everyone has a place on Passover. And also, if you have grandchildren and you want to come to the Jammies and Jeans Passover Seder, where I bring the puppet that Melinda fixed. Melinda fixed my puppet, and she did a good job. Now the glasses don't fly off, and the tallis is on properly. He looks like a mensch, a real Sephardic mensch. Mensch is not a Sephardic word. No, I just long to be Sephardic. I do. Well, my wife is like as Ashkenazi as I am. The joke of my wife's family is they come from Milwaukee. So her mother makes the joke that the family left Russia, came to America, and stopped at the first place that reminded them of Russia, Milwaukee. Right? Adrian wants to say something.
This Sunday, what theater is it, Mike, downtown? Wilshire Ebel Theater. There's a free program for Jewish people who've had ancestors from Vilna or Lithuania. It's a program, musical program, free, at the Wilshire Ebel Theater for those who've had relatives or their ancestors who've come from Vilna or Lithuania. So it's in the afternoon, 3 o'clock. Okay?
Thank you. Okay. Schumer wrote the book. Senator Schumer just wrote the book. Okay. Okay. October 8th, yeah. So there's lots of things that you can, lots of good content out there. I hope everyone has a good Passover, Chag Sameach, and we hope it's a beautiful holiday. If you are requesting my services to sell your chametz, you have to let me know so I can sell your chametz, and Patrick Miller can show up in your house and go into your cupboards and, yeah. I hold it on. You know how much you know how much he pays me for the whole thing? $1. So we'll take it off of your dues. It's it's less than a penny, then for the whole you know get. Yep. So, but we'll give you a dues reduction. But then I buy it back from him right after Passover is over. And he legally, by the way, could show up at your house. You can eat your chametz. Okay, everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.
support Israel. They send,
Well, they do it for their,
no, forget what the reason is. I don't care what the reason is.
All right.
They can have the most rotten reason in the
no,
world. I don't care.
I'm familiar with that idea
I
because
judge
my.
people by their actions.
Yeah, okay, right.
Okay.
They say the same thing, doesn't matter the reason. My stepdaughter and her husband, because they're very, pro-Israel and they belong to organizations that are supported by a lot of fundamentalist groups. And they say they don't care.
So several, a year or so ago maybe, I mentioned listening to Fox or right-wing media, you get a totally different opinion, because most Democrats will not ever hear the other side. Okay, you know, God forbid you should listen to Fox News, which
No,
is
I
not the
do,
only.
I do. I actually take, what's his name, Brent, the guy who's on at 6 o'clock.
Red, or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember names.
Yeah.
So that's great. But what you'll hear, oh, truly, it is great. But what truly is that where left-wing media will criticize Israel for 20 million things, you won't hear that on right-wing. They are fully supportive of what's happening in Israel. They're telling the truth about Israel, and as far as I'm concerned, there are things that got our backs. When people say that Christians doesn't like Jews, I take umbrage at it because that's not my experience. Yes, there are Christians who do not like us. I give you that. But
I go along with
but
that.
as a group, official opinion, and then when you hear it on the left, Biden did not send, the Congress had passed laws that were going to send arms to Israel, particularly the arms that were precise and would only kill, you know, the target and less of the thing. Biden cut us off. Biden did not send that stuff to Israel.
Like arms?
Yeah, arms, yeah. And, what is it? And then you'll hear them say, Democrats say, Israel has the right to defend itself. They'll say it over and over again. But their actions don't mirror it. That's what we have to be concerned. Even under Obama, Obama did some good stuff, and Democrats do good stuff too. But when it came to Israel, they were not our friends. They'll say they have the right to defend us. Let me translate. That means if somebody's shooting at you, you can shoot back, but you cannot be aggressive. You can't go in and do what you usually do to prevent it from happening again. So you have to listen between the words. So
Are you trying to explain why you are supporting the right wing?
I have always been the swing voter. I have
No,
I don't
it's
think
time
so.
for me to go. I got an appointment.
Going to the doctor?
Yeah.
Huh?
I want to vote Democrat, but the things have changed so badly. When they lied to us about Biden being mentally, who was running the country for 4 years? He did not come and answer questions for 4 years at any press conference. The only thing he was able to do was to read a teleprompter, and even that he had troubles with. He did not answer one. I said, it was the most opaque presidency.
Let me just stop you here. Are you saying that you like Donald Trump and you think that, that he's not being guided by other people?
I think Trump, from what I have observed over the years, is a very independent thinker. He's pushing actually, this may surprise you, he has pushed the Republican Party a little bit to the left. That may shock you. But his stance on abortion, for example, is that first trimester, go ahead. That's his personal opinion. And he's anti-abortion. No, he wanted to see what you hear about Republicans is what they say about Republicans. It's never usually the truth. For example, there's good people on both sides. You know.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, that was horrible, right? And then you heard that he never condemned the
I
white nationalists.
heard him say it.
I know you said that, but they framed it that much.
I don't know, it was on, at the time, it was on TV. I heard those words come right out of his mouth. But you're saying it's.
What did
deeper
they
than
say one sentence later?
I don't know.
Now, they said for years, and Obama said it, and Kamala Harris said it, and Biden said it, that he never condemned the white nationalists or the white supremacists, right? The sentence after he said, there's good people on both sides, and I don't mean the white nationalists, I thoroughly condemn them. Why didn't they put that in the name?
Where did you hear that he said
I
that?
saw it. I saw the whole thing.
Look that up.
Yeah, I looked it up.
No, I'm saying I would have to look it up.
Yeah, but if you saw the whole tape, he condemned them immediately. There were 2 events that took place.
Well,
that
who are the good people?
The good people who went, what he was referring to, let me divide this into 2 things. There were the people who were, the few nights before the Sunday, when he said it on Sunday, the few nights before there was the marches and there was these awful people.
Right.
On Sunday, you had the people who were there demonstrating on both sides about whether to take statues down. So there's good people who wanted to keep the statues and good people who wanted to tear them down. That's what he was referring to. Not that white supremacist the couple nights before, or the person who ran down somebody. But he can.
Let's look at that phrase right now, because I've never heard anybody say what you said, and I'm going to forget what you
And
said.
I've looked it up, and you look at the transcript.
I want to see
They
that.
kept you in the dark.
I want to see that.
I can't. It's hard to find. I have looked it up on many occasions.
Let me, because that's a very critical thing.
Okay, I'm going to try it from. And I don't mean.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the problem with the internet is they keep you in the dark. There is.
Well, they're selective, on both sides are selective.
Right. What is appropriate? Okay. You've got 2 news organizations. You've got the right wing and the left wing. What is appropriate, and you should